standing firm. A key Ukrainian port city defies a Russian ultimatum to surrender.
This is Rick Glout for TaiwanPlus, here on the Polish side of the border with Ukraine. I've got a report on how this region is coping with the war next door and what this means for Taiwan.
A churn for the worst. How global shipping delays and the war in Ukraine is making butter harder to find. We travel the rocky road to success with Taiwanese punk band PAPUN. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has entered its 25th day. Moscow offered to open a humanitarian corridor for residents of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol to escape to safety, but that's only if Ukraine surrenders the city. Kiev has rejected that offer. Bing Wang reports.
A once thriving city, now in ruins. Ukraine's southeastern port city of Mariupol has been the scene of some of the heaviest fighting since Russia launched its invasion in late February. Some 400,000 residents are now trapped in the city without electricity, heating, food, water, and with no way out.
Значит, в подвале мы 11 дней находимся, 11-й день в подвале, а война у нас идет 25-й день сегодня. Мы каждый день считаем и надеемся на лучшее, на человеческое существование. Квартира разбита, все разбито. Вот с подвала куда нам выйти?
Moscow's defense ministry said it would open a humanitarian corridor, but on the condition that Ukrainian forces lay down their arms and surrender the city. Kyiv quickly rejected that demand.
Блокадний Маріуполь увійде в історію відповідальності за воєнні злочини. Зробити таке з мирним містом, що зробили окупанти, це терор, який будуть згадувати і через століття.
Mariupol's city council also said that Russia forced thousands of residents into Russian territory over the past week. As the Russian forces tightened their grip on the strategic port city, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is unwavering in his efforts to bring in international support. On Sunday, he addressed Israel's legislature. In the speech, he asked for military aid, access for Ukrainian refugees, and a stronger stance against Russia.
Можна довго запитувати, чому ми не можемо отримати від вас зброю, або чому Ізраїль не ввів потужні санкції проти Росії, чому не тисне на російський бізнес, але відповідь все одно обирати вам.
The Ukrainian leader also urged Israel's prime minister to act as a mediator between Russia and Ukraine. It was the latest in a series of speeches Zelensky has made to legislative bodies around the world. Russia's ultimatum has come and gone, with Ukrainians standing firm as their lives and homes are reduced to rubble, and they hope they will get the help they need to keep the fate of their country in their own hands. Ricky and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus's reporter Rick Glout was in the Polish town of Przemysl near the border with Ukraine. He spoke with residents there about fears of a spillover of the conflict from their besieged neighbor. And as he reports, for Taiwanese people in Poland, the invasion of Ukraine is a potent reminder of the threat posed by China to Taiwan.
This is Przemysl, a small town in southeastern Poland, just 14 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. It's become a major hub for refugees fleeing the war next door. But its residents are also coming to terms with the fact that this could be the next front line with Russia.
Ale boję się sytuacji i boję się tego, co może Putin jeszcze nawymyśleć. No jesteśmy przy granicy, a on się odgraża, że Przemyśl będzie, znaczy nie Przemyśl, ale w ogóle Polska, że Przemyśl jest najbliżej granicy, no to Przemyśl jest następny po Lwowie. Tego się boję.
Boimy się. Tutaj wyczuć takie po prostu napięcie, że coś się dzieje, że po prostu no wcześniej nigdy takiej ilości wojska ani służb ogólnie mundurowych nie widzieliśmy tutaj, dlatego jest to dla nas coś nowego I dla mnie osobiście, no, wzbudza to dla mnie taki we mnie lekki niepokój, że jednak coś się dzieje, no, także.
The nearby border looms large over the town. This is the busiest of 8 border crossings between Ukraine and Poland. In the last few weeks, more than 2 million people have come into this country from its war-torn neighbour. Along with a massive humanitarian effort to support the influx of refugees, military operations have also swelled here. The US has deployed troops, equipment and surface-to-air missiles as the fighting in Ukraine edges closer to Poland, a NATO ally.
Reprezentuję służbę, która jest odpowiedzialna za bezpieczeństwo nie tylko Polski, ale obywateli Unii Europejskiej. W związku z tym, że jest to zewnętrzna granica Unii Europejskiej, my jako mundurowi musimy być przystosowani do działania w różnych sytuacjach. Ta sytuacja konkretna, z którą się teraz zmierzymy, nie ma precedensu w historii chociażby naszej służby.
Beyond Europe and its NATO allies, the Ukraine conflict has also prompted Taiwan, a country more than 8,000 kilometers away, to consider its own defences. Taiwan also has a belligerent neighbour. China claims the country as its own and regularly threatens to take it by force. Recently, Taiwan boosted military spending and revamped its training of reservists. And earlier this month, a show of force and combat readiness exercises on a Taiwanese island just off the coast of China. For Wang Wei-Chao, a Taiwanese expat living in the Polish capital, Warsaw, the war next door is a reminder of the real threat Taiwan faces.
In Taiwan, we have a big threat next to us. And the people always talking, now it won't be a war. Why? It's already have such peaceful life for so many years. How come it's a war? It will destroy everything, destroy the economics, destroy the civilians' life. So for me, it's also a big shock. Nothing is impossible in this world.
Watching the conflict unfold across the border, Wei was moved to take Ukrainian refugees into her home. One of them is Margarita, who took 7 trains and travelled 64 hours to flee Russian forces. The 21-year-old believes a nation's fate lies in its citizens' hands.
If you want to protect and defend yourselves, you definitely should do it, and the world will support you, because in nowadays, world stands for the kind side, not the devil side. If you want and if you show the world you are fighting, you are defending, you will get it.
Whether the world will come to its defence in the event of an attack from China is a question that hovers over Taiwan. But the Ukraine conflict has prompted a re-examination of the country's determination and ability to defend itself if it faced a similar fate. Rick Lau for TaiwanPlus in Przemysl, Poland.
Our reporter James Chater spoke with Rick Glauert about Polish perceptions of the conflict. He began by asking what the mood was like at the border crossings.
We arrived at the border maybe almost a month after the conflict in Ukraine started. So I think the images we saw in the early days of the invasion of huge streams of people crossing the border have actually died down quite a bit. But the mood of the border crossing amongst those that were arriving was still pretty somber, and obviously people were tired, they looked a bit shell-shocked. People were carrying everything that they owned, and then suddenly they were in this big busy area where people were handing them things.
And you mentioned now that the stream of refugees is somewhat smaller than perhaps when the invasion began, but obviously these towns in Poland have seen a massive kind of surge in the number of people that have been arriving. How are residents of those towns dealing with the massive changes that they've seen over the last couple of weeks?
So we've been in Poland nearly a week now, and we've been to quite a number of towns, as far away as Warsaw, which is in the middle of the country, to quite a few towns closer to the border with Ukraine. And I have to say that there are refugees everywhere. Every town you go to will have a huge number of people arriving at stations and bus stations, because there's been a concerted effort from Poland to make sure that the refugees are spread out around the country. And at the same time, I think Polish people are aware of the sacrifices of their neighbors next door, and that they also identify with the feelings of fear and apprehension of having a neighbor like Russia, and how quickly things could change, and how devastating it would be to have this invasion of your own country.
And from your reporting, do you think that there is a concern amongst people in Poland of the conflict spilling over into their country as well?
Absolutely. I've spoken to so many people who are feeling uneasy about the conflict next door. They know that Putin is a completely unpredictable element in this situation. And I think a lot of people didn't expect that for him to actually invade Ukraine, and now he has. They don't really see any reason why he would stop there. There's also a heightened security presence. As we drive around these areas, we see a lot more army activity. We've seen like civilian airports that have missile systems around them, this sort of thing. And so I think there is a big sense of tension in these border areas, that they are now the new front line, effectively, of what has been proven to be a very bellicose neighbor, that is Russia.
Following hot on the heels of an egg shortage, Taiwan's bakers are once again struggling to obtain one of their key ingredients. As Jaime Okan reports, this time it's butter that's proving difficult and expensive to obtain.
Bakeries and cake shops can be found on almost every street corner of Taiwanese cities. And these businesses are starting to feel the pinch of inflation. The price of butter, a staple ingredient in baking, has gone up by almost 50% in Taiwan, and it's expected to keep rising.
现在是有钱不一定有货可以到，对我们烘焙业者来讲，整体来讲是非常的营运上面非常的困难呐。
Much of Taiwan's butter is imported from the European Union, New Zealand, and the United States. With lingering disruptions to shipping caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, butter is already in short supply, and the situation is predicted to get worse.
它的航程到21天，竟然变成2个多月，现在真的很担心。
Taiwan's bakers were already reeling from an egg shortage last month, caused by high demand in the holiday season and colder than normal weather, making it harder for chickens to lay their eggs. Now, with the war in Ukraine pushing up the price of commodities like oil and metals, Taiwan is bracing for more volatility in the costs of raw materials. Local bakers will be hoping that they can focus on raising their dough and not their prices. Kamashu and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
A cycling race in northern Taiwan has been overshadowed by the death of a participant who was killed by a drunk driver on Sunday morning. Eric Gao reports.
An early morning bike ride ends in tragedy. A Philippine cyclist killed by a drunk driver.
一名单车骑士因参加双主场轮霸西滨自行车赛，于前往集合地点八里区廖天地庙前，遭自小客追撞，经送医后伤重不治。肇事的自小客车驾驶汽车逃逸。
The driver, identified only by his surname Chen, was apprehended several hours later. His blood alcohol level was still above the legal limit at the time he was arrested. After questioning, he was released on bail of 200,000 Taiwan dollars, or about 7,000 US dollars. Official figures show there were 318 drunk driving fatalities last year. That's up 10% over the year before. DUI fatalities accounted for over 10% of all road deaths last year. The government has already increased jail terms and fines for drunk driving, and they're rolling out more new regulations at the end of March. These include publicly identifying repeat offenders and also fining the passengers of drunk drivers. Chris Ma and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Starting on Tuesday, travelers from South Korea arriving in Taiwan will have to do a mandatory COVID-19 test at the airport. Taiwan implemented the rule following a surge in cases in South Korea, where the 7-day average is just over 400,000 cases a day. Any traveler who tests positive will be transported to a designated quarantine facility or hotel. On Saturday, Taiwan recorded 120 imported cases, the highest number in a single day since the pandemic began. Japan on Monday lifted all remaining COVID-19 restrictions around the country as the government seeks to get the national economy back on track. The government decided last week that infection trends were low enough to lift restrictions in the capital Tokyo and 17 other prefectures. Japan is now free of COVID restrictions for the first time since early January. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida warned that there will still be a transition period during which people should take maximum caution against infection. Only a third of Japan's population has so far received a vaccine booster shot. Hong Kong has announced plans to lift flight bans and cut compulsory quarantine for new arrivals, easing some COVID-19 restrictions that have been in place for 2 years. Starting April 1st, flight bans will be lifted on 9 countries, including the US and UK. Mandatory hotel quarantine for travelers will also be reduced from 2 weeks to 1. Chief Executive Carrie Lam also announced that plans for the compulsory testing of all residents have been suspended. She said that public impatience and resistance from the business community led to the easing of restrictions, as the government pursues a so-called dynamic zero-COVID approach. Coming up, a new UN survey has ranked the world's happiest countries. Where does Taiwan fall in the mix? Details after the break.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus. For more great stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. A top U.S. admiral says China has fully militarized at least 3 of the islands it has built in a contested South China Sea. The islands in question are the Mischief, Subi, and Fiery Cross Reefs. U.S. Indo-Pacific Commander Admiral John C. Aquilino said Sunday that China has placed fighter jets as well as anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems on the reclaimed land. He called these actions hostile and said they go against Chinese President Xi Jinping's past assurances that China would not turn the artificial islands into military bases. Beijing claims virtually all of the South China Sea as its own territory, while several other neighboring nations, including Taiwan, have overlapping claims. Colombian authorities working with American counterparts have seized cocaine worth $120 million from smugglers in a Caribbean sea. The maritime bust took place on Sunday after Colombia's Air Force spotted and chased a speedboat carrying the contraband towards Central America. Coast Guard officers caught up with a boat around the Colombian island of San Andres, which lies off the coast of Nicaragua. They seized 3.4 tons of cocaine and arrested the boat's 5 crew members, 3 from Nicaragua and 2 from Costa Rica. Taiwanese scientists have developed a robot to clean polluted waters. Their design has been awarded by the government for its innovation. TaiwanPlus reporter Alice Chen tells us more about this new technology.
Researchers in eastern Taiwan are testing a groundbreaking prototype, a robot that removes impurities on the surface of water. It can clear from 3 to 4 kilos of trash to 40 kilos of oil, and was developed by the Port of Hualien and the National Donghua University.
透过 GPS 卫星定位的方式，透过我们的这个AIoT 的这一些技术跟能量，然后结合绿能科技。
The battery-powered innovation is similar to household cleaning machines, and with 4G and 5G signals, it can be controlled remotely.
中小型的好处就是可以补足大型的这个清洁船舶的一个缺点。好，那所以的话，我们这样的一个设计呢，会让我们整个的可以做到 portable， 很容易移动在不同的场域。
Cleaning up oil slicks is a primary job at Hualien Port. The usual method of using oil ropes pulled by ships is costly and inefficient, but authorities expect the robot prototype to change that.
自动巡航啊，还有遥控巡航这几个模式都已经算是测试成功了。
那未来有机会的话，我们可能会发展一条比较大型的船，能够实施真的是代替以后人工去做清理浮油的作业。
The robot also has a backup solar energy system built in to extend its use. As scientists continue to refine their invention, hopes are high that this small machine will eventually help create a friendlier marine environment. Alice Chen for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has been ranked the happiest country in Asia for the second year in succession in an annual UN survey. Taiwan placed 26th on the World Happiness Report released by the UN's Sustainable Development Solutions Network that surveyed 146 countries this year. The report found Finland to be the happiest country in the world, followed by Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. The ranking is based on polling from Gallup and other factors, including national GDP and life expectancy. The report also found that people around the world are engaging in more acts of kindness, like helping strangers, volunteering, and charitable giving than before the coronavirus pandemic. On the other end of the scale, Afghanistan was ranked the unhappiest country in the world, followed by Lebanon and Zimbabwe. PAPUN means afraid of getting fat in Mandarin. It's also the name of a Taiwanese band that's making a name for itself with crowd-pleasing music and a super-sized sense of humor. Our reporter Yvonne Yang went backstage to learn more about this unique band featured in the TaiwanPlus docu-series Road to Legacy.
You want to play music? You need money. If you have no money, you can't do shit. Get a job!
That's the advice from PAPUN drummer Lee to up-and-coming bands. Nowadays, Lee is the owner of a bar, while the other two members, Bo and Shiny, are full-time musicians. But what was it like when they started? PAPUN was formed in 2007. They rose to fame thanks to their silly yet eye-catching performances. When they started, they played lots of gigs with very low pay or even for free. 12 years later, in 2019, they had a sold-out concert at Legacy, a venue that can hold 1,000 people. To understand how they got there, we have to start from the beginning. And the question is, why did they name their band PAPUN, which is Mandarin for afraid of getting fat?
原本闪亮在想团名的时候，那时候就是他，因为他特别喜欢 PAPUN 这曲风，然后我们就在讨论说，那团名到底要取什么？然后我就想说，因为 PAPUN 念很快，就变怕胖的感觉。然后因为他本人又很胖，所以呢就觉得如果他叫怕胖团的话，会很有趣。
PAPUN's live performances are always fun and energetic. And they've performed in strange venues that no other bands have played before, like in a swimming pool.
那也是蛮酷的，因为我们也没有自己办过在户外，就是那种奇怪的场地。我们小时候都看那个 Sum 41的有一支 MV 叫 Into Deep， 它就是在游泳池里面嘛，那就对我们影响很深啊，就是我也想要在这个地方表演试试看啊。
PAPUN identify themselves as a punk band, but some people say their music is not punk. The band says that punk isn't just a genre of music, it's also a way of life.
也不是说听觉上吧，我是说就是做自己想做的事情，就是一个很朋克的事啊。
看过我们表演就知道我们多朋克。
The soul of the band is the lead singer and songwriter Shiny, who writes most of the band's songs and has even directed some of their music videos. Like Peter Pan, he's known for not wanting to grow up.
我觉得只要我变成有点大人的样子，那我的妈妈就会看起来变老，因为她就觉得她责任退下。一个责任退下的人，对我来说就是她觉得她老了。我不希望我妈变老，所以我就是要一直是她的小孩子。
说难听一点，学音乐真的是养活不了他自己啦。
后来会走这一条，我是觉得就是我们也没有阻止他，也没有什么特别的支持跟鼓励，想说你进来玩就让你去玩，就这样子。
好大的月亮，你有看到吗？我一个人在窗前看着它。
Shiny may be afraid of growing up, and PAPUN may be afraid of getting fat. But one thing's for sure, they're certainly not afraid of their newfound success. The band recently released a new EP called 5, and they are gearing up for their biggest concert ever. Their 15th anniversary celebration at Zepp New Taipei, which can hold 2,000 people. Kamashi, Klein Wan, and Yvonne Young for TaiwanPlus.
我愿意用时间来证明活着的意义。
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Betty Chen. We'll leave you with some footage of ballet stars from around the world performing in a charity gala, Dance for Ukraine, at the London Coliseum Theatre. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.